The barn smells of damp straw and sweat, its shadows swallowing the faint glow of a tallow candle. Jean, barely 16, clutches the wax, her fingers trembling as it drips onto her palm. Beside her, Etienne's breath is ragged, his eyes wide with fear. They were told impure thoughts summon hellfire, yet here they hide, behind splintered planks, hearts pounding. The priest's voice echoes in their minds. Do it in darkness, in silence, never face to face, lest angels weep. So they turn away, bodies stiff, obeying a ritual that feels like punishment. This isn't love, it's a cage of shame, forged by holy words. Jean's candle sputters as a cold wind snakes through the slats. Welcome to the strange, suffocating world of medieval sexuality. We dream of the Middle Ages as a tapestry of romance, knights whispering vows, lovers stealing glances under moonlight. But the truth is far darker, woven with fear and control. In 14th century Europe, sex was not a private act but a battlefield, ruled by the church's iron grip. Desire was a sin, pleasure a crime, and every touch a potential pact with demons. What you're about to hear is no fable. These were real rules, real punishments, real lives crushed under the weight of divine judgment. From whispered confessions to burning pyres, this is the story of people, ordinary, terrified, human, trapped in a world where love was a curse and shame was law. In the village of Verrières, nestled in the shadow of the French Alps, 1350 was a year of frost and fear. The church's spire loomed over mud-streaked homes, its bells tolling not just for prayer but for judgment. The church didn't just preach salvation, it reached into every bed, every heart, dictating how bodies could meet. Sex was no act of love, it was a transaction with God, permitted only to create life. Pleasure was a whisper of Satan, and the rules were merciless. No coupling on Sundays, feast days, or during a woman's bleeding. No daylight trysts, no lingering touches. Even the missionary position, stiff and joyless, carried a warning. Do it wrong, and demons might slip through the cracks of your soul. Confession booths were the church's eyes, their wooden slats a trap for secrets. Father Gell, Verrières' priest, sat behind the lattice, his voice cold as he demanded details. When did you touch her? How? Did you feel joy? Couples stammered, faces burning, as he catalogued their sins. Monks in distant scriptoriums penned manuals, de modo conjugi, on the manner of marriage, with diagrams of holy positions, their ink-stained hands mapping bodies they'd never known. To stray from these was to invite divine wrath. A farmer, caught kissing his wife too eagerly, was forced to kneel on stones for hours, muttering psalms until his knees bled. A widow, rumored to dream of her lost husband, was warned her lust could summon demons to her bed. The village lived in dread. Every glance, every brush of hands felt like a step toward damnation. Children learned early. Desire was a fire that burned the soul, yet human hearts are stubborn. In Verrières, a young couple, Marie and Thibault, dared to love. They met in secret, their laughter muffled by the weight of sin. They thought their whispers were safe, their touches unseen, but the church's ears were everywhere. A neighbor, pious and spiteful, overheard their sighs through a wall. By dawn, Father Gell knew. The square was packed that frostbitten morning, the air thick with the scent of wood smoke and fear. Marie and Thibault stood bound, their faces pale as the crowd pressed close. Father Gell read their sins aloud, his voice slicing through the silence. Impure coupling, defiance of God's law. The whip cracked, its leather biting into Marie's back. She bit her lip, refusing to scream, her eyes fixed on the church's cross. Thibault flinched with each strike, his own lashes drawing blood that stained the snow. The crowd was silent, some weeping, others clutching rosaries, as if the couple's shame could taint them all. Marie's tears fell, but her silence was her defiance, a small rebellion against a world that branded her body a sin. The bishop, visiting from Lyon, watched from a wooden platform, his rings glinting as he nodded approval. This was justice, he said, God's order restored. But as Marie and Thibault were led away, their eyes met, a fleeting spark of something unbroken. The church could whip their flesh, but it couldn't extinguish their hearts. Yet in Verrières, even that spark was a crime, and the village whispered, what comes next? In Verrières, women carried a heavier burden than men. Their bodies were battlegrounds, their desires a threat to the soul of the world. The church taught that women were Eve's daughters, born to tempt and destroy. A woman's pleasure was not just sin, it was a doorway to witchcraft. The Malleus Maleficarum, though not yet written, echoed beliefs already rooted in Verrières' soil. A woman who enjoyed sex might summon demons, her womb a cauldron for dark magic. Even victims of rape faced blame. their bodies deemed unclean tunnels that invited sin. Childbirth, too, was tainted. Pain was God's punishment for Eve, and a difficult labor meant the mother had strayed. The village midwives, half healers, half spies, were the church's enforcers. Before a girl could marry, she faced the virginity test, a ritual as humiliating as it was invasive. In a candlelit room, midwives prodded and whispered, their hands cold, their verdict final. A girl deemed impure could be shunned, her family disgraced. Herbs, rue, sage, mugwort were brewed into bitter teas to cleanse or tighten young women, their acrid taste a reminder of their shame. Some whispered that these potions could prevent a child, but to speak such things aloud was to court the stake. Clemence, barely 15, learned this too late. Her father, a tanner, had bartered her to a nobleman, Lord Reynaud, twice her age. His breath smelled of wine, his hands of coin. The marriage was a transaction, blessed by Father Geld to secure the village's tithes. On the eve of her wedding, Clemence stood trembling in the church's vestry, her shift pulled aside as the priest and midwives inspected her. Their eyes were clinical, their murmurs like prayers for a corpse. Pure, they declared, but Clemence felt defiled, her body no longer her own. Behind veils, her mother and aunts wept, their tears a silent protest against a world that traded girls like livestock. The village buzzed with myths. A woman who laughed too loudly might be a witch. A child born with a mark, a red blotch, a twisted limb, was proof of the mother's sin, perhaps a tryst during pregnancy that tainted the womb. Clemence heard these whispers as she walked to Reynaud's manor, her dowry chest rattling behind her. She clutched a sprig of rosemary, a charm against demons, but it couldn't shield her from the nobleman's gaze or the priest's. That night, as Reynaud claimed her, Clemence stared at the ceiling, her heart a stone. She wondered if love was possible in a world that saw her body as a curse. In Verrières, to seek joy was to invite horror. The church's laws were a noose, tightening around any who dared to feel. Adulterers were branded with hot irons, their flesh sizzling as the crowd jeered. Masturbators faced the stocks, their hands bound or burned, their shame displayed for all to mock. Same-sex couples, caught in fleeting moments of tenderness, were dragged to the river, their bodies tied to stones and sunk beneath the current. The church called it mercy. To drown was to cleanse the soul before judgment. But the ripples told a different story. Love was a crime, and joy was its accomplice. In the market, whispers spoke of forbidden things. Herbalists sold devil's potions, aphrodisiacs of mandrake and henbane, hidden in jars of salve. A few women dared to carve tools from wood or leather, crude dildos shaped in secret. But these were deadly risks. Court records tell of Isabel, a seamstress, arrested for unnatural satisfaction after a neighbor found a carved candle in her home. Her trial was a spectacle, Father Gills reading her sins as if they were scripture. The crowd gasped, clutching crosses, as if her act could summon Satan to their doors. Isabel's fate was sealed in the square, where a pyre awaited. She stood, her hair shorn, her dress torn, clutching a wooden cross as if it could save her. The flames rose, licking her feet, then her legs, her screams swallowed by the crowd's chants. Witch, tempter, demon. Her crime wasn't witchcraft but desire, a hunger for something beyond the church's cage. As the fire consumed her, her cross fell, charred and broken into the ashes. The village watched, some weeping, others praying, all complicit in the horror. Father Gell raised his hands, declaring her soul damned, but Isabel's final gaze, defiant, human, haunted those who met her eyes. Brothels existed, tucked in Verrières' shadows, but they were for men's release, not women's agency. A prostitute, Jeanne Larousse, worked under the church's watchful eye, her earnings taxed to fund the bishop's coffers. Yet even she faced the whip if she dared to feel pleasure. The rules were clear. Sex was a duty, not a joy, and any who broke them paid in blood or shame. By 1350, Verrières was a village under siege, not by armies but by eyes. The church's obsession with purity turned neighbors into spies, their ears pressed to walls, their tongues eager to betray. Town guards patrolled at night, reporting moans or laughter that echoed too loudly. Holy spies, pious women with rosaries, lingered outside homes, listening for signs of excess. A couple caught kissing too long faced a fine. A wife who refused her husband could be dragged to court, her defiance labeled sin. Widows like Agnes lived in fear, accused of seducing spirits if they walked alone at dusk. The air was thick with paranoia, every shadow a judge. Marriage manuals penned by monks dictated even the rhythm of love. 3 thrusts were necessary for procreation, more was gluttony, a mortal sin. In some villages, candlelight sex was banned. It must be done in darkness, in shame. Father Gilles preached that God counted every movement. his gaze unyielding. The villagers obeyed, their beds cold, their hearts colder, yet some still rebelled, their whispers of love a quiet treason. Guillaume, a blacksmith, was one such rebel. He loved his wife Margot with a fierceness that defied the church's rules. In their small home they stole moments of tenderness, their hands entwined under the blanket's cover. But a neighbor, envious of Guillaume's forge, reported their excessive laughter. The guards came at dawn, dragging Guillaume to the church. In the confessional he knelt, his broad shoulders slumped, his voice a broken whisper. "I touched her because I loved her," he said, tears staining the wood. "Is that damnation?" Father Guillaume offered no comfort, only penance, a pilgrimage to Lyon, barefoot, through winter's frost. Guillaume left, his heart heavy, wondering if love itself was a sin. The village never recovered. The surveillance tightened, trust eroded, neighbors avoided each other's eyes, fearing a glance could spark accusation. The church's victory was complete, not in saving souls but in breaking them. Verrier's people lived in silence, their desires buried beneath layers of guilt and fear, their lives a testament to a God who demanded shame above all else. The Middle Ages are gone, their pyres cold, their manuals dust, yet the chains of shame endure. In whispered guilt, in purity myths, in the fear to speak of desire, we hear echoes of Verrier's bells. The church burned its witches, its lovers, its dreamers, but the real horror was what it left behind, a world where joy was a sin and love a sentence. Today we scoff at their rules, their spies, their fires, but pause, look closer. The shadows of control still linger, in laws unspoken, in glances averted. The past asks us, what flames do we still stoke, and what hearts do we bind? They burned my body, but my cross still stands. Do you dare to hold yours?